Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Tal, and this is the BaLaGaN Connection. And today, the BaLaGaN Connection is going to connect the city of Jerusalem. I got up early this morning and decided to come out to one of the most beautiful views in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, from the top of the Mount of Olives, here is the city of Jerusalem, the city where everything is going to connect. And what I'd like to do in the next couple minutes is connect you to the view behind me, connect you to the history, to the biblical, archaeological. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about politics and wars. And hopefully the BaLaGaN Connection is going to tie together Jerusalem to everything that's happened in the past, to everything that's happening today, and to everything that is going to happen in the future. We're going to divide this into 3 parts, and we're going to start off with an overview of the city of Jerusalem that kind of tells a little bit about the history. I apologize to all the biblical teachers and all the pastors and everybody who's been teaching these subjects for many, many years. I'm going to do this really, really short and really, really cute and really, really, well, I hope interesting, because like everything else, there's a BaLaGaN. The BaLaGaN started on the hill behind me. According to everything that we understand, that dome sits on top of a hill called Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is where, according to Jewish tradition, God dropped the first drop of reality, and from there it rippled out to the rest of the world. So this is the foundation stone. This is where it all starts off. And it's not by chance that we're standing here overlooking everything that's happened. Mount Moriah is where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac. And God told Abraham, no more human sacrifice. Men are not going to sacrifice other men or women. And that was the place where that took place. But the story of Jerusalem starts off a little bit later. Way back in the hills behind me is a city called Bethlehem, which is really important. You all know what Bethlehem is all about, but Bethlehem is also the hometown of a guy named David. Nice name, I like it. But David becomes king, according to the Bible, and decides not to use Bethlehem as his capital city. So he goes from there and comes over to here. Because down in the valley below is the original site where David set up his capital city. It was called Jerusalem, and David conquered Jerusalem from the Jebusites and decided to turn Jerusalem into his capital. And when David died without building the temple, it was Solomon, his son, who actually built the temple. Solomon becomes king after David is dead and decides to continue the expansion. He builds the temple where you see that golden dome behind me. Well, most of the people believe that's where it was. There's arguments about everything. The temple is where the sacrifice takes place. And it's very interesting that the connection between where Solomon built the temple and the site where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac is literally on the same rock. The Babylonians come much, much later, and one of the things that they do after they conquer the city of Jerusalem is destroy the temple behind me. If you had been standing here, you would have watched the destruction of the temple right down there. Years go by, Ezra and Nehemiah come back, rebuild the temple. And again, everything we understand says that they rebuilt the temple where you see that building right there. And temple stands up. It was kind of a dinky little temple. I mean, they actually cried about it. But during the Roman period, much, much later, along comes a guy named Herod the Great. And Herod the Great is really, really into building. And what he does is renovates the temple from Ezra and Nehemiah and builds a big, massive marble structure right where you see that golden dome. It was so big that according to all of the stories, it actually rose up above the horizon that you see behind me. And that's the backdrop for the New Testament. Years go by, that temple is destroyed by the Romans in 71 AD. And ever since the Romans destroyed the temple, that hill has been left devoid of temples and devoid of sacrifice. It's the Arabs who came much, much later, decided to turn the Temple Mount and the area around the temple into a holy site for the Muslims, the third holiest site for Muslims after Mecca and Medina. And more or less, that's a situation that we see today. In 1948, it was the War of Independence that allowed the Jews to take control of half of Jerusalem that you see behind me. The western city was in Israeli hands, but I'm sorry to say that the Temple Mount, the valley below me, and this area that we're standing in now was left in Arab hands at the end of the War of 1948. Everything changes in 1967. And again, this is how the connections are made. We're sitting on top of the Mount of Olives, a hill overlooking the city of Jerusalem from the east. It's an east-west mountain. It's connected to so many things, but basically the Mount of Olives was the vantage point, the strategic point that the Israeli army actually conquered before they went in to conquer the city of Jerusalem. The commander of the paratrooper forces, Motagul, actually stood here on top of the Mount of Olives when he ordered his men to go down the road that you see right down below me and actually enter the city of Jerusalem from the Lion's Gate. They entered the city of Jerusalem. They conquered first the Temple Mount and then the rest of the whole city of Jerusalem. And for the first time in 2,000 years, the city of Jerusalem is under Jewish control. If I turn this camera around, you can't see it right now, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it. Yes, I think I can pull this off. If you look down here, right below me, you're going to see a lion on the trash can. That lion on the trash can is the symbol of the city of Jerusalem, which means after 2,000 years, the Lion of Judah is back in Jerusalem. Now, if that's not a connection, I don't know what is. So we're standing on top of the Mount of Olives that plays such an amazing role in different interactions in the Bible. And to connect the Mount of Olives to the history that we talked about, to the situation today, I want to point out a couple of connections that a lot of people don't really think about. The city of Jerusalem is a place of sacrifice. It was the place where the temple stood, where the sacrifice takes place. It is where Jesus was sacrificed on the other side of that hill. It's where the temple stood and was destroyed. The sacrifice plays a big role in the history, the biblical history of the people, but also the spiritual aspect. One of the interesting things that I always find interesting is that the Mount of Olives actually is the connector. Actually, we're standing on a geological watershed. I mean, rain on this side goes towards the west, rain on that side of the hill goes towards the east, and the watershed is more than just water. It is the border between what I would call the city and the wilderness. Jesus comes from the Galilee on the final stage, and he enters the city triumphantly from the Mount of Olives, walks down Palm Sunday Road, which is just below us here, enters the city, and starts the last week of his ministry here in Jerusalem. It's also not by chance, and again, connections are what makes this interesting, that he's going to come here before he walks into the city of Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives is the connector between everything in the wilderness and the sacrifice in the city. And if you're getting all of that, then why am I not surprised that Zechariah 14, that says, "Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand on that day on the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof towards the east and towards the west. And there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall we move towards the north, and half of it towards the south." This is where he's going to stand. This is where this mountain is going to break into two. Part of it's going to go that way. Part of it's going to go this way. And the entry into the city of Jerusalem is going to go through that blocky, squarish, double gate, sealed-like structure down there, known as the Eastern Gate. And this is where the beginning of the end is going to take place. I want to make one more thing to connect the whole story together. We just celebrated Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the holiday that celebrates or mourns, actually more accurately, the destruction of the temple. According to Jewish tradition, both temples, the temple from the Babylonian period and the temple from the Roman period, were actually destroyed on the same day on the Jewish calendar. We fast, we mourn, we cry. The destruction of the temple is something that has completely changed us because, think about this. For Jews, the temple was sacrifice, and sacrifice was salvation. So when the temple is destroyed in Jerusalem, the salvation is taken away from the people, and we still mourn that every year with fasting. In fact, we even have a tradition that says that on the most important day of our lives, I mean, the day where everything's supposed to be perfect, okay, if you've ever been to a Jewish wedding, you know what I'm talking about. The bridegroom stomps on a glass to break something and remind us all of the temple that has been destroyed. That's how deep it is. But here's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. According to Jewish tradition, the temple was destroyed because of hatred. Because we were disunified, we hated each other, the different factions were fighting each other. There was hatred in the hearts of the people for other parts of the community. That hatred made us weak. That weakness allowed our enemies to destroy what was the center of our spiritual life. And maybe this is what I'm trying to say. I'm looking from the Mount of Olives at what's going on all over the world. And what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, what I'm sensing more than anything is hatred. Hatred of this faction to this faction, this identity to this identity, this nation to this nation. That hatred is weakening us all. That hatred, according to our tradition and our history, is what destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. And I'm sharing this with you because I need somehow to convey the fear that I am feeling of what's going on around us. We need to stop this. We need to reconnect the city of Jerusalem, reconnect the pieces and the parts of our communities, reconnect ourselves to our spiritual center. And maybe this is why I came out here early in the morning. It is kind of early. I don't know if you kind of feel that, and kind of put this all together so you would understand we have to stop the hatred. So, after all of that, we'll add a few more pieces here, but I just want to say, I'm really enjoying doing this. I know it's a little bit more complicated than I thought, but this is really fun. So I really enjoy your comments. I really enjoy that you share this with other people. We really like that you like the movies, and please subscribe. Send us questions, tell us what you want to hear. And we'll try to put up as much of these as possible. I'm aiming at getting up to about once a week or once a week and a half, something like that. So stay tuned, follow us, and hopefully we will bring you some more BaLaGaN connections from different parts of the country. This is David Tal, the BaLaGaN Connection, the Mount of Olives, overlooking the city of Jerusalem. And as a tour guide who has no tourists, I hope, I pray that this BaLaGaN will be over as soon as possible, and we will see you back here on the Mount of Olives as soon as possible. See you soon.